Hello and welcome back to Let's All Laugh At, the football podcast that thrives at someone else's expense. I'm George and I'm joined by Dan, Johnny and Alex. I think this might be the first time in the whole podcast that we've had the same panel for 2 consecutive weeks. Definitely doesn't happen very often. So yeah, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad at all.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, all good, guys. All good.
Yeah, I mean last week all of our teams won, but with two of them playing each other, that was not going to be possible this week. So not everyone's as happy as they could be, unfortunately. I guess we'll start with that one now that we've brought it up. Chelsea v Liverpool. Very much a contrasting display of fortunes from both teams. I actually thought Chelsea played that all right that game for the first part. I think it was quite level. But then as soon as the second half started and the red card happened, I thought it was a lot more one-sided from then on out. What do you two make of it?
To be honest, I sort of just wanted to gloss over it.
Not allowed, I'm afraid. It's called Let's All Laugh At for a reason.
Yeah, no, it's like you said. I think the first half, until Christensen either decided he wanted to play rugby or trial out for the WWE, or I just honestly don't know what went through his mind. Unless it was because he saw Kepa rushing out, he thought, oh no, I better do this instead. But yeah, I think first half we were okay. Whether we were still sort of in the game, so to speak, because, being a sort of scoreline journalist, yeah, it's still 0-0. But the second half was just dire. Whether it was because we were down to 10 men, whether it was because we just made our own mistakes, whether, so many different reasons. But it just looked so poor. And it probably follows on from the Brighton game that although we managed to win that, like I said before, it sort of flattened us.
Yeah, from my point of view, obviously, again, going on basically just a scoreline, obviously happy with the result. Quite happy with the performance as well, to be honest. It was a lot more like us. Even up until the sending off. You're right in a lot of ways. It was quite even, but I did feel like we were almost in control as well. I quite liked what we were doing. We didn't have anywhere near the chances that we created then second half, obviously, and it was a sending off. Let's not beat around the bush. You can't do that to someone when they're through on goal. But yeah, no, I was pretty happy generally. I thought we were good. I thought we were really good second half, obviously, when Chelsea just stopped playing, really. I know when you're down to 10 men, it's tough. And I imagine when you're down to 10 men against the current champions, it's even tougher. But I expected a little bit more second half from Chelsea, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the two teams separately, in terms of individual players, obviously the one Liverpool player that's been in the headlines the most the past week or so, and for a lot of the summer window actually, before he was even a Liverpool player, Thiago, finally signed for you guys from Bayern Munich, 30 million euros, including add-ons, I believe the final price tag was.
Yeah.
This one's we've talked about him multiple times on the show, but you finally got your man, so what did you make of the signing and the deal and how that's all unfolded, and what did you make of his performance against Chelsea?
Yeah, I'm made up with a signing, and certainly the money behind it, the finances behind it, because although it gets to something like 25 million, it doesn't get there for a long time. I think it literally takes the whole 4 years to get anywhere near that. And with the current financial climate we're in, structuring a deal like that is daylight robbery, quite frankly, from Michael Edwards' point of view, Liverpool recruitment guy. But yeah, in terms of his performance, there was a lot of people getting quite carried away, and you know what I'm like for people getting carried away on Twitter. Yeah. He's a hell of a footballer. Like I think he's a phenomenal player, and even some of the things he did Sunday, he looks like he's wearing slippers half the time when he's playing. He's unbelievable. But I don't think he was outstanding on Sunday either. To be honest with you, the whole pass record thing, Chelsea didn't really engage him a lot. Everything went through him, which was nice. Played a couple of pretty average passes as well, and then he gave away the penalty. So I wasn't exactly in love with his performance. But having said that, it was nice for him to get minutes and make a debut in such a comfortable second half. So yeah, obviously, made up generally. And obviously Diogo Jota as well to arrive, which was nice.
Yeah, of course. I honestly completely forgot about Jota until just now.
Yeah.
I think it's your most expensive signing of the window so far, and it's completely glossed over my mind.
It was quick. It happened very randomly. So
it did. It was right after, what was it? It was the youth defender of yours. I forget his name.
Yeah, Yana Hoover went to Wolves.
That's the one, yeah. I went to Wolves, and then straight after that, literally within 24 hours, Yotta's joined you. So
yeah, it did come from nowhere because we were linked quite heavily with Ismaila Sarr from Watford, and that looked like the one that was going to happen, if anything, because he had been playing for Watford, etc. And all of a sudden, Yotta was a done deal. And normally, these things are quite long, drawn-out processes, but within like 12 hours of being linked with him, we had the unveiling video. It was rapid. It was so strange for us. But, yeah, happy with him, to be honest with you. Really happy with him.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a bit of a bizarre one because Yotta hasn't actually played that much for Wolves. I mean, I know he's got an excellent scoring record in the Europa League especially, and he is still only 23 years old, so there is a lot of untapped potential there, and I suppose ultimately that's what Liverpool are investing in. But between him and Jimenez, you'd expect Jimenez to be the one that Liverpool go for, but I suppose if he's more expensive, then Liverpool are probably trying to play their similar shrewd game.
I think that, and I think Yotta, by all accounts, I've seen bits of him, obviously. I think he fits the style because he's been described today by our assistant manager as, I think, a pressing monster, and that is obviously the way we play. And I think Wolves are trying to go away from that counter-attacking pressing style, so I think that's why they weren't too fussed about letting him go. But yeah, I'm just you got to trust Klopp and etc. when we buy anyone these days. They could buy someone from League Two, and you'd probably have to back them.
Yeah. Yeah, I pretty much. So moving back on to Chelsea, we won't stay on this for too long, Alex, don't worry. But I wanted to get Johnny's thoughts on something. I mean, we've talked about the race for the top four an awful lot, as we often do before the start of the season. We talked about Chelsea with the spending that they've had was sort of seen as like, they'll definitely get top four, cemented as favourites to at least get third place behind the big two, for lack of a better term. As someone who's been tipped for top four themselves and is a rival of that, after a performance like that against Liverpool, do you perhaps see them? Do you perhaps think that maybe there's a shot that you could, they could slip out of it and you see blown the race open a bit? Or do you think that because it's against Liverpool, it's very much a one-off thing?
I mean, if they get a decent goalkeeper in, because Kepa's awful, isn't it? He's a
I was trying to go through that without mentioning Kepa, but now you brought it up, yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure for the second goal, Mane's second goal. I'm not even sure who he's trying to pass to. It's just a dreadful. It's like he pressed the wrong button on FIFA. It was like he pressed the wrong button, and he just went straight to Mane, and he's never going to miss. I think with Chelsea going forward, they're always going to score goals. Let's be honest, because they've got two good players not to score goals. But I do worry about their back four. I do worry about them a little bit. I mean, I think Rudiger's on his way out by all accounts. The back, Christensen, he's all right, but I mean, I think he'd be quite suited for MMA after that tackle on Sunday. Yeah. But the back four it's not great. And I mean, I can, as an Arsenal fan, I can't exactly talk, but I do worry about Chelsea at the back because I think if you run at them, they're very, very vulnerable. But it was against Liverpool, a very, very good Liverpool side. And yeah, can Arsenal get top four? It's going to be difficult, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed Arsenal's top four chance. I suppose what I was more getting at is, do you think that Chelsea's rough start makes it more likely for them to get top four? Do you think it's, do you think they could potentially drop out of it? I mean, Alex, what do you think? What sort of expectations do you have? Have your expectations changed after this season, or do you still think there's more signings that need to come in first before we make a judgment on that?
Well, I mean, for Chelsea or Arsenal?
Well, I was asking Alex about Chelsea, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Chelsea, to be honest, I think the Liverpool game was sort of not to say a free hit, because I would have obviously liked to have points out of it, but you could kind of think, okay, Liverpool probably have that over us. Yeah, there's probably signings that need to happen. There's probably a little bit of time that maybe you can't necessarily have. But no, I still think we should be a top four team. Like Johnny was saying, we've got the firepower. I think it's just going to be a case of we have to score more than the opponent does.
Can I just pick up on something to Alex there? The Kai Havertz one, obviously he's played twice and he's playing again tonight, I see. He's played out of position, really, every appearance so far. I'm not sure Frank knows quite how to use him at the minute. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, because I think he would be better off as a 10 rather than a wide winger. I don't really know what Frank's doing with that one, to be honest.
He hasn't looked particularly effective or happy with it so far, has he, either?
No, and I know, like you said, I know he's playing against Barnsley, so whether that's to boost his confidence or just get him more because I don't even think it needs minutes in his legs as such. I think he probably needs to get up to speed with English football. But no, I would have him more centralised. But the problem you'd then have is, I think, changing the formation, which I don't know if they'd be sort of keen to do. Plus, you then have to try and fit like Ziyech and Pulisic into that team as well, and potentially lose. I mean, I'd like Mount, but I reckon you'd probably lose Mount to fit those front players all in.
Yeah, I think Mount will be the one to go. Looking at the team from an outsider's point of view, it looks like he's going to be the one to me. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to get your thoughts, and that's fair enough. Like, yeah.
The problem that we got is that we've obviously spent 72, 79 million, whatever it is, plus probably add-ons and everything else. Not a player you can just instantly drop or like leave out. But I know Lampard's come around and said like, you know, no place is guaranteed. But I'm pretty sure Abramovich isn't going to want to sit there and think, I've just spent 80 million on this player to sit on the bench.
No, exactly, definitely not.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I think when you compare Havertz to Mason Mount, I think it's obvious which one should be more dropped when you consider who they spent all the money on. I totally agree there. So yeah, we'll move on to your team next, Johnny. Arsenal 2-1 against West Ham. Not quite the comfortable routing that everyone thought you were going to get, similar to the Fulham game, but a win nonetheless.
Oh, it was poor. That's what it was. We were very lucky, very lucky. You know, West Ham, they were very unlucky not to get us out of the game. I thought that they had a blatant handball that should have been given. I know the poxy rule off his sleeve. Well, I don't understand the handball rule. I don't think anyone does anymore. Yeah, we got lucky. Defensively, we looked a bit nervy. I think Kieran Tierney being in the warm-up didn't help. But we won the game, just about. It wasn't impressive by any stretch of imagination. But if we can do that every game, win ugly, then I'll take it. But West Ham were very unlucky. Very unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about West Ham on this show, sort of wax lyrical about them, so to speak. But there's certainly a lot of reasons to be, you know, to very much call them in a state of chaos right now. I mean, I don't know if any of you saw David Sullivan's interview on TalkSport with your boy Jim White, but but it was, I mean, I didn't actually listen to the interview myself, but I follow a lot of West Ham fans on Twitter, and they were definitely not happy about it. But to be fair to them, in the Arsenal game, you know, they did turn up, they didn't bottle it, and I thought they, like Johnny said, they were lucky not to get something, and it must be frustrating for West Ham, because they only seem to really do that against the bigger clubs. I mean, obviously they beat Chelsea at the end of last season, got a draw at Man United. I'm not to say that they beat Norwich as well 4-0. I'm not saying they don't turn up against smaller clubs, but they always seem, whenever they do dip off, it tends to be against the teams, against the more winnable games. So, I mean, Dan, that must be, as a West Ham fan, it must be, you must want to pull your hair out.
It is quite a bizarre one, isn't it? I've noticed that over a few seasons now with West Ham, they have a tendency to turn up in the big games. I know another TalkSport presenter who's a Chelsea fan always jokes about when he talks about West Ham, so they'll beat us though, don't worry about it, because that's what they do. Yeah, it's almost as if Moyes and previous incarnations of their managers have like prepared more for the big games, if that makes sense, because they've got Chelsea away or United away, whoever it may be. They go the extra mile in training that week and they get more organised. But when it's Brighton at home or Southampton at home, for want of a better team, it's almost a bit more relaxed in training, and then they turn up and they get beat. It's a strange one. But yeah, they were unlucky on the weekend, definitely West Ham. I did notice Johnny had curbed his prediction of the top four, and I wondered if it was on the back of that performance, and it sounds like it might have been.
That was actually going to be my next question. So, yeah, Johnny, how do you rate your top four chances after that one?
Well, I mean, of course, we've got to play better than that to get top four. Of course we have. But as I said, if we can win ugly, then we've got every chance. It wasn't great, I must admit. Going forward, we lack creativity. Aubameyang wasn't his normal self. It was a strange performance, but as I say, we got the job done, which is the most important thing. But we've got to improve. We've got that little team on Monday night, which is going to be interesting. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for that. That's going to be plenty of goals, I think. But
I do as well.
Of course we have. But you know, if we could do that every week, win ugly, because you don't get any extra points for playing well and winning games. So, you know, carry on winning games, and that's all we can ask for.
Well, we might as well preview that one because it is between two of our clubs. They come along when you support as many clubs as we do. They do come along thick and fast.
Yeah.
We've all talked about Arsenal's chances. Dan, I suppose you can probably only see this one way with how you've started. Although it hasn't been quite as strong as last season, you'd still like to think you can get the job done.
Yeah, I do. Arsenal, prior to Saturday's performance, I would have been more worried. What I seen from Arsenal on Saturday was poor. It's been well discussed now. But obviously Arsenal have kind of had the beating of us in the past two games. The Community Shield is by the by, really. But obviously in the run-in, after we'd clinched the league, they beat us at their place, even though on the night I still felt we were the better team, if I'm perfectly honest. But they've got some dangerous players, like Aubameyang, etc. You know, they're going forward. I still feel, certainly with a reasonably new look back four, obviously they brought in that Gabriel, I still feel defensively, I've always felt Arsenal are weak defensively. This is going back 10, 15 years now. You can score goals against Arsenal. That's kind of the way it's always been. So with our attack, I fancy us to outscore them, if you like, yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree, to be fair. I mean, Mane frightens the life out of me. I've said so many times on this podcast that I think he's one of the best players in the world, Mane. Him going forward against us, he does scare me a little bit.
Is Tierney going to be injured for that, is he, as well?
I don't know. He's not playing tonight, so I think he might be, which is a big shame. A big shame if he's out, because I love Kieran Tierney. I think he's a great left back. But if he's out, yeah, it's going to be difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arsenal will definitely want all of their best players fit if they want to hope of getting something at Anfield, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll have to see how that one unfolds. So we'll move on to the biggest result of the weekend. Well, I mean, to be fair, all of you as fans of top four clubs and rival clubs, I'm sure it's probably entertaining for you as well. But Manchester United 1 and Crystal Palace 3. I've got to be honest, I mean, we talked about it on the show. Well, actually, no, it wasn't on the show. It was on Owen's podcast we did with him, Parks and Bennett. I talked about how it was. I backed us to get something because of how we'd done against Southampton. And I thought Man United would be slow off the blocks from obviously kicking the season off later.
Yeah.
But I also thought that because it's Man United, even though we won there last season, you know, Solskjaer came out before the game and said that, you know, it was like they could have played that game 100 times over and they would have won the other 99 times. It was a freak result. And everyone got on this case for that, especially after they lost. But if you look back at that game, we literally scored with our first chance on goal, a long ball up to Jordan Ayew. They had 2 Stonewall penalties, in my opinion, turned down. They missed the penalty that they did get, and then we managed to nick a winner late at the end. So we very much stole that game. United were definitely the better team for that game. But this time, I thought it was totally different. I thought we were much the better side. I thought they really played into our hands, and I thought our counter-attacking was brilliant. I thought that it was honestly one of the most complete performances I've seen since we came up. I really think it's alongside the likes of Man City away, obviously, the one that we won. And also the 3-0, sorry to bring it up, Johnny, but the 3-0 against Arsenal a few years ago under Sam Allardyce, that was unbelievable as well. So those for me are my top 3 performances. And the fact that one's not even number 1 shows how good we've been against the bigger side since we've came up. So I'll start with you, Alex. What did you make of what was ultimately a crazy game?
Yeah, I mean, I had to sort of do a double take and think.
You're telling me, yeah.
Was that a Roy Hodgson team? Because
yeah,
it's not something I've ever known that the manager to sort of do. But I think this season he's sort of changed his ways a little bit. I know, obviously, in terms of recruitment, they're looking younger than they would normally. So whether that's also playing into the way they're playing on the field, because now, yeah, they look very good against United. I mean, Man United, let's not beat any bushes. They were awful. They were, I watched them against Luton last night and they were poor again. So I don't know whether it was just not to take anything away from Palace because it was incredibly impressive. But I think Man United is just so slow and sluggish that they're just not at the races, and I think it was a good time to play them. But I mean, yeah, it's just an all-round top quality performance that I did not expect from a Roy Hodgson side.
Well, I mean, you say that, but possibly in terms of the attacking, I can't understand what you mean. But in terms of the smash and grab and the counter-attacking style, I think it was very much, in many ways, that very much epitomised a Roy Hodgson performance. But I think that also part of that where that came from with the attacking intent. I think a lot of that was down to making Wilfried Zaha captain, because He would even, there were reports he even said in the dressing room, to the younger players in particular, that, we've got so much ability in this squad and we've got a lot of players who can really do something. So let's not be afraid to play our game, even if it is Man United. We've done it before. We can go here and get a win. And that's what we saw. We saw players, like Andros Townsend, like Jeffrey Schlupp, who didn't have the most magnificent of seasons last year, really come into their own. Joel Ward as well at right back was unbelievable. You almost don't miss Aaron Wan-Bissaka at all. But I think you talked about the signings as well. The likes of Eberechi Eze and Batshuayi both on the bench because Hodgson didn't want to change a winning team, and you can see why off that performance, even though a lot of people, myself included, were slating him for it.
I think that particular game, Zaha probably has a point to prove as well, or feels that he has a point to prove, which probably added, fire to the belly and all that sort of thing, because, he obviously didn't do very well when he was at United that previous time. And he's pushed for a bigger move, what seems like every year since. But, I think he had a point to prove and he was playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, I definitely think that played into it. But I also think that, again, he is playing for his move, and I still don't think he'll get it because I think there's so little left in the window and the price we want. Again, as I've said a million times, I can't see anyone paying it. But I also think that now that we've actually matched the ambition that he's had, at least in the window, I think he's more determined than ever to try and push us up to that higher bit. One to get himself noticed, and two is to get him if he's not going to leave, to get him as close to that level as possible. Whether or not it's successful at the end of the year, we'll see. But I think, going back to what I was talking about before with the signings on the bench, both of them came off. It allowed, we moaned about Roy for not making subs, but actually I thought the subs were pretty spot on throughout the whole game. And it's because he has those extra options to bring on. He has the depth he's been crying out for years now. I think that, having them, it's a massive boost for the team. And I thought Eze, when he came on, was brilliant for the 20 or so minutes he was on, played a massive part in the third goal, Zaha's second goal. I just thought, I thought it was a really good performance from us. But you touched on Man United there, Dan. It was, there's the excuse of not being at the races and, and starting the season later and all that. But, you'd still expect them to be doing much better than that.
Yeah, 100%. I think you said Palace deserved to win. I'd go a bit further than that. They probably deserved to win by 2 or 3 more. You battered them. They were terrible, and that sounds like it's taking anything away from Palace, because they were much better. They were brilliant, and I don't really buy into the whole start of the season late, not ready thing. I mean, this is Premier League football we're talking about here. Like they've got to be. They're as fit as you could possibly be. You've got to be well drilled. If you get 5 days in training, you've got to be ready for it, And I remember hearing Eric Dyer moaning about their schedule, the Tottenham schedule, like saying how bad it was and how much they were playing. And then I seen someone tweet about it, said like, we've got lads in part-time footy, we've got lads who work all week, graft all week, and then turn up to play on a Tuesday night and a Saturday. It's like, that's a tough schedule. Not Premier League football. And it's a similar thing with Ollie moaning about that. It's like, just get on with it, you know what I mean? So I didn't buy that, and I thought United were genuinely appalling. And everyone was saying that they need pace at the back, but what I don't get with that is, if say they bring in a quick centre-half to play alongside Harry Maguire, then surely you just target Harry Maguire anyway. You ignore the quick one and just go at the other side, and you've still got the same problem. So, yeah, I thought Palace were much better, deserved to win at least 3-1 like they did, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, I could certainly agree with that. I mean, I even remember talking about on this podcast how, I said we were going to have a slow start and we'd be lucky to have 1 point by the end of our running that we had. We've got 6. Like, I can't believe it. And I think it takes so much pressure off us. We've got the top of the table clash against Everton next week. I think that'll be an even tougher game than Man United with how they've started. But I think it puts much less pressure on. Even if we lose the next games against Everton and Chelsea, we're still in a comfortable position. And then obviously we've got the Brighton game straight after that, which is always massive pressure, regardless of where you are in the table. But, we'll cross that when we get to it, because I think that's going to be, with how both teams are playing currently, I think that's going to be a very interesting contest. So yes, speaking of the rest of the Premier League, before we move on, I'm going to try something a bit different for this episode. But I thought what we'd do is, because there's been a lot of games in a lot of leagues starting up for the first time. So I thought what we could do is we'd each pick one game in any league at all, whether it's lower league or abroad or Premier League or whatever, that stood out to us particularly, and we can just talk about it for a bit and talk about what they want to. So I'll start with you, Alex. Have you got any game in particular that stands out to you?
Yeah, the Southampton Spurs one, probably an obvious one.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the way how it was literally a game of two halves. Spurs were, to be honest, because I remember it was back this Saturday. I hope so. But, Spurs were just awful to begin with. I think Southampton looked pretty good going forward, and then just Spurs, their front line couldn't stay on side. Their midfield looked, they couldn't really string too many passes. Although Ndombele looked like the player that they had initially tried to sign before he went off. But then, when you've got a player like Heung-min Son, who, to be honest, to me, it looked like he was playing for his place. Not that it's under any threat, but because of the arrival of Gareth Bale, it looked like he wanted to sort of prove that he needed to be in the team. And he just blitzed Southampton apart. But from an England point of view, it's good to see Danny Ings scoring still. Whether he gets in the England side, I don't know. But, I think, that game stood out to me as just one which was mad.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Harry Kane making 4 assists in one game. Is the first Premier League player or first English Premier League player ever to do that in one game? I mean, from a striker, I mean, the link up he has with Son is unbelievable. And it's just such a crazy... I mean, Johnny, as much as I would love to make you compliment Spurs, I want to turn more attention to Southampton because they're such a contrasting team. I mean, last season they lost 9-0 at home to Leicester, as infamously as well. The same season that they beat Spurs and Man City at home. It's like they either seem to be like 10 out of 10 or 0 out of 10.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's a great game of football. Don't get me wrong, cracking game. And Southampton, I mean, of course, Son was superb. Harry Kane, 4 assists. I'm sure he'll get a trophy for that at the end of the season.
Yeah.
No, it was a game of two halves, to be fair. Great goals. Son took all his goals superbly. Yeah, Southampton are a weird side. So as you say, 1 minute they look fantastic. They look unbeatable. And next minute they look dreadful. Great game, as I say. And they're in a bit of trouble, Southampton, They're in a bit of trouble. No wins so far. And leaking goals as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've sort of controversially on Twitter compared Ralph Hasenhüttl to Roy Hodgson. Not in terms of a playing style, obviously. Hasenhüttl is very different. But in terms of their stubbornness with tactics, because Hasenhüttl is much more attacking, but that's all he really knows. Southampton play with their high line, the notorious high line after this game, and it either allows them to play some really great stuff and thrash teams, or it leaves them so exposed at the back. And I think that's what we saw against Spurs, is that this time it just didn't work, and it allows the attackers to get in and punish them for it. They could essentially conceded the same goal 4 times over, so it's quite mental. But yeah, so moving on, Johnny, what's your game?
I think the Everton game, I mean, that was a crazy game as well. That was unbelievable. And I remember a couple of weeks ago we were saying about James Rodriguez, he's going to struggle. I'll tell you what, he ain't off playing well, isn't he? Jesus. I mean, I thought he'd struggle as well, to be fair. I thought he'd find the Premier League a bit physical. But the boy's on fire. I mean, he's passing the ball about superbly, took his goal superbly as well. Yeah, and Kieran Gibbs, what was he doing? I mean, that's just a daft thing to do. I mean, it's going to get seen, isn't it? Just silly. What was he doing?
Yeah. I mean, Dan, do you want to eat your words anytime soon?
No, not yet. And I'll tell you for why. Because I'm still not having it. They've played Tottenham, who on the day were awful. The first day, weren't they? They were terrible, Tottenham. So James Rodriguez looked okay. And then on the weekend, they played West Brom, who were then reduced to 10 men. Let's all calm down a little bit about James Rodriguez. Right? When they play Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, on the day, then we'll see just how decent he is. And you know what? I don't doubt his ability on the ball with time to do what he wants. I think he can probably be good at football then. What I'm more doubting with him is when people run past him and he has to track back and stuff. I just can't. And no one can say that he doesn't have to do that because this is Everton they're not good enough to have luxury players who just stand around and wait for the ball. They're not that team. Like Real Madrid can do that, and Bayern Munich, and them teams you played for previously. But Everton can't afford to carry someone in that way. That's where I think it'll come unstuck for him and them. But obviously, listen, he was brilliant again on the weekend, and they twatted West Brom, so fair play.
Yeah, well, I mean, he will have. I'm sure you'll be proved wrong next week when he's clattered by James McCarthy in the centre of the park. But
hopefully,
for your sake, yeah. I just find it funny. Like literally, as soon as we release that poll and that prediction, it's just all gone downhill on that for you, and we won't let you forget it.
I'm waiting. I'm all right with it so far. I'm okay.
Good to know. So we'll move on to yours. What's your game that you've chosen?
Yeah, I'm going away from this country. I'm going to Germany, where their league kicked off. The Bundesliga kicked off this weekend. Mm-hmm. And Bayern Munich, the current European champions, just eased themselves back into it with an 8-0 win over Schalke.
Yeah.
I mean...
tight game, that one.
Yeah. We all seen in the latter stages of the Champions League how good they were, if we didn't know already. Like, obviously... twatted Chelsea and Tottenham earlier on in the year, so we kind of knew. But 8-0 to start your season. I know Schalke pretty poor, but even so, that's a bit of a joke, isn't it?
I mean, I couldn't believe Lewandowski only scored one, and that was from the penalty spot.
Yeah, I know. They had some 17-year-old kids score for them as well.
Yeah, former Chelsea players.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But no, I saw that, and I think Schalke haven't won since. Like for their project restart as such, they haven't won a game since then. I think is it David Wagner's in charge?
Yeah.
So I think after his first year in the Prem with Huddersfield, it's all sort of gone downhill for him.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Bayern, I find it hard to be, not be continuously bored by the Bundesliga because it is just they're so demonstrably clear of absolutely everyone. I mean, even Dortmund with the title challenge that they put together a couple of years ago, Bayern just came back and blew them out of the water with their quality and won in the end. It's like it's such a one-team league at this point, and they're not showing any signs of slowing down. Obviously, champions of Europe, like as impressive as they are, like I almost sort of shrug at them at this point. It's like, yeah, whatever, Bayern thrash teams 8-0. That's what they do. That's. I mean, I know I'm a bit of... I suppose I can't really talk that much, given how the Premier League is increasingly becoming a two-team league with what City and Liverpool are doing. I mean, honestly, if Liverpool weren't as smart as they are with their business, you really do think Man City would walk away with it with how much they spend. But yeah, that's where we are with Germany. So for my one, I'm going to be boring, I'm afraid. I'm going to bring us right back to England in the Premier League. But I'm going to choose Leicester v Burnley as my game, because not only was it a good scoreline, 4-2, still haven't had a single draw in the whole Premier League, by the way, since it's kicked off. But I thought this game was quite contrasting, very much summed up both teams very well. You've got Leicester on one side, who obviously played their stuff, scored some really great goals, and their quality shone through in the end. But you've got Burnley on the other hand, who it was a very threadbare squad, a very threadbare team that they played. You had the young lad Dunn from the academy, got on the goal in his Premier League debut as well, so great start for him. But with the lack of signings they've made, they're going to be relying on their academy as much as possible. I mean, I know there have been talks have escalated since that game. You've got the likes of Dale Stephens and Craig Dawson being linked. I mean, have you ever heard of more Burnley signings than those two? But, I mean, the interesting one for me is Harry Wilson from Liverpool has also been strongly linked. Did really well at Derby, did okay at Bournemouth, scored a couple of good free kicks, but hasn't really lit the world alight since then. Dan, what do you make of that signing?
I think it'd be a good signing for them. How much sense it makes, because you just touched on the Burnley style, if you like, and I don't know if Harry Wilson fits into that. He's quite, again, he's probably a luxury player in a lot of ways. Got a nice left foot, gets the ball down, plays, etc. Doesn't look likely.
Do you think that's what they need, though, at Burnley? I mean, aside from Dwight McNeil, they don't really have any youth and creativity in their team.
Yeah, Dwight McNeil was the one I thought of, really, aside from everybody else. I don't know if the way they play lends itself to having more than one, if that makes sense. I think it'd be a nice alternative to Dwight McNeil, and they'd have to adapt their style slightly to get the ball down more if they had two of them, if that makes sense. So I don't know how much that works for them, but I think he needs to go, Harry Wilson. I was surprised it was Burnley. Had it have been even a Southampton or somewhere, I've probably been more more accustomed to it, if you like. But yeah, no, listen, it'd be a good signing for anyone in that sort of region of Premier League, I think, because he can play. And he did okay at Bournemouth. He probably fell off towards the end, but so did they. So we can't really blame him.
Their centre-back, Jimmy Dunn. It sounds like a proper 1960s name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a great name.
Yeah. Well, they did well for them, and their academy has come a long way since they came to the Premier League, from Category 3 all the way to Category 1. I think they even turned Category 1 the same day we did. So, they're going to want to be producing as many players as possible, especially with the lack of business that they've done. But, on that, I've waxed lyrical about Sean Dyche on this show before. I really rate him as a manager, and I think the fact that he hasn't been backed, all right, Burnley aren't the biggest club, and obviously the current climate has not helped them at all. But, they haven't got the strongest squad. Last year, they were the only team in the league that had a squad older than us. They've got the oldest squad in the league by far. And I think, Harry Wilson doesn't make much sense to you. And I sort of get that in terms of what they've normally done in the past. But in terms of the approach they need to take, I think they need to be buying younger players for sure. And I think yeah.
I'd agree with that. And like I say, I just think for what they currently do, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're right, if they want to change that slightly and maybe play a more attacking brand of football, which happens in the Premier League, then someone like him would definitely be a good option for them, and probably affordable. He's probably going to go for around the 10 to 15 million sort of mark, I'd say, and it's not life-changing money in the Premier League, although Burnley might be getting taken over, so watch out.
Yeah, talks of American consortiums taking them over. As someone who is owned by an American consortium, let me just assure you, Burnley fans, you'll be begging for my garlic back within a couple of months if they're anything like the same. Because, you have the likes of Harrison Blitzer brought in with us. Were brought in to invest in the main stand. Still hasn't happened yet, despite the plans being given planning permission. Still waiting on mayoral approval, and there's been all those sort of disputes with Sainsbury's. Honestly, I live near Bristol Rovers at my university. Sainsbury's got their entire new stadium cancelled because they just refused to budge and negotiate. So if this stand ever gets off the ground, I'll be very surprised. And the lack of investment in the past couple of years has largely been attributed down to them because they just, they essentially thought that buying all these players back in 2016 under Alan Pardew, the likes of Benteke and Townsend and all that, was essentially going to get us Champions League straight away. Like that was because in American sports, that's how it's worked. It's a lot more competitive and the bottom teams are given a lot more money.
Yeah.
And, they clearly didn't understand the English game. So I think that now they've seen that, they've been talked about selling. They've been talking about selling for a long time. Still nothing come up yet. So, we're a bit of a mess with them. And Burnley, I understand why you sell the club because if Garlick can't back the manager, then there's not much they can do. But yeah, just all I'd say is be careful what you wish for. But speaking of American investors, I don't know if any of you have seen this break on Twitter recently. Apparently Wrexham are now, right now, Rob McKelney and Ryan Reynolds reportedly interested in buying Wrexham. Talk about headlines you never thought you'd see, right?
Absolutely mad. I know a few people who are Wrexham fans, and I've had a few texts saying we'll see them in 5 years. It is absolutely mad. Like, what is going? Not even the money side of things, but Ryan Reynolds. Like, what's that about?
It is the sort of thing he'd probably do. In fairness, he is the sort of bloke who would buy almost as a joke. Almost. He could definitely afford to.
Crazy that.
I can't stand the bloke personally. He reminds me a lot of the kids I went to school with. Just not someone I really get along with, but not something that's shared amongst a lot of other people. So I'm sure Wrexham will become a lot of people's third or fourth favourite teams with that to go through. But certainly a big story. I certainly think that Wrexham, one of the sleeping giants in non-league especially in terms of the level, I think they've got a lot of support behind them, and I think that if they could get up a couple of leagues, even to the Championship, I think would be a really great achievement for them. So there's certainly positives to it either way. And, whether or not it happens is another thing, but it could be a mad few years for Wrexham fans if it does happen.
Mental.
Yeah. But speaking of lower league clubs, obviously, we're not going to get, at the risk of getting too political with this, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't go too far in that direction, but with the new COVID regulations that have been introduced, the return of fans to stadiums that was due to start next month has been postponed, and there's talks of it being postponed as long as 6 months, which, if you're a lower league club, that is the worst possible news you can hear because you need that gate revenue back as quickly as possible. And going that long without fans, Alex, it could be really tough for a lot of those clubs, especially with how many have already been in financial trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, those clubs are the ones that are obviously, going to be affected the most. Like you said, there's a couple of clubs that have already had problems. I mean, there's probably other problems to it, but that's obviously not helped them in terms of receiving the revenues they need. I mean, I live very local to Stevenage, and they're a club that I don't think they're in dire straits, but they're not in a great position financially. Although there was something that came out earlier today on Twitter that was brilliant in terms of their marketing strategy. But no, it's dangerous, and I'm fearful of what you might see if the ban is for another 6 months or so.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this at length about the financial cost of teams. There's not really much else to say. As well as as for fans themselves want to get back in the ground, it's important for the clubs because without the TV deals of the Premier League and the Championship, where else are they going to get their money from? And the reason that the League One and League Two were called off in the end was because it would just be much more expensive for clubs at that level to have to play every game rather than just stopping the season right then. So if that's the case, is the season with how many games we got to play left? 44, 43? So for them to carry on is going to be very difficult. And, again, I don't think that many clubs are going to be in dire financial straits, as we've seen the likes of Wigan and Macclesfield, but it'll certainly be more than we want to see. And, the EFL chairman or whoever it was talked about, it being a drop in, the start of the drop in the ocean is like a start of the next wave to come. The tip of the iceberg. There's a drop in the ocean. I can't get my quotes right today, but it's definitely something that could have a big knock-on effect.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's gonna be tough for a lot of these little clubs who it costs them more money to host the games, and it's gonna be a nightmare. I think. As I say, you can't get too political because
yeah,
it's almost laughable. It's not laughable, but it's just beyond it. Like it's like Monday night, isn't it? 8:15 kickoff, and pubs are closing at 10. It's just it's like a joke if you ask me.
Yeah, well, we'll move swiftly on before we can go too down the wrong. I mean, we brought up Black Lives Matter in the first episode, so we've already walked a thin line as far as that's concerned. But yeah, we'll brighten this up with a Let's All Laugh At because I'm sure there's a bunch of nominations for this week. We'll start with you, Johnny. Who have you got?
It's quite difficult actually. It was going to be Kepa. It was, but I actually feel quite sorry for him, to be honest, because I think. He's obviously his confidence is shot. So, and I think Frank Lampard made a big mistake in playing him. Should have played Cavaleiro instead. But it's not going to be him. So it has to be Manchester United. Every single player on that pitch, well, woeful, and it's hilarious. And I had a very good time laughing at him. Harry Maguire has probably got the turning circle of a Boeing 747.
Have you seen his aggregate score against Crystal Palace since he's been playing in the Premier League? Like for Hull, Leicester, and Man United now. It's something like an aggregate score of like 24-5. We've beaten him 5-0. We've beaten him 4-1. We've beaten him 4-0. We've beaten, he's absolutely mental. Like I think he's only won once against us in about 12 games.
Yeah, no, Man United were awful, and they can sit there and moan about the season, blah blah blah. It was only 30 odd days they had off. Surely these players should be fighting fit, and that Donny van der Beek, he played all right when he came on, but they need defenders, not midfielders, and it was hilarious watching him get bad.
Yeah, I mean, briefly touching on Kepa because apparently I have to. Yeah, I mean it's just a weird transfer all around. The record signing for a goalkeeper, and I thought he actually started quite well at Chelsea. To be fair, he had a few months or so where it looked like it was quite a smart signing, but then obviously you had the farce in the League Cup final, and since then in particular, it just seems like his career's just gone to ratchet. And all I'll say is that you've got Kepa, who costs 70-80 million pounds over it was. You've got Vicente Guaita, who is absolutely free, keeps a lot more clean sheets, makes a lot less mistakes. Guess who gets in the Spain squad? I mean, I think it's ridiculous. I think he deserves a chance, even if he's a lot older. But yeah, Alex, is there anything you want to add to that, or should we just move on?
No, I mean, look, Kepa, you can make a whole podcast about it, but for me, yeah, like you said, his confidence is shot. He obviously knows there's a goalkeeper in Mendy coming in, but I think it could be the start of something good because it will give him, not to say that Caballero's not offering them competition, but Caballero's, nearly 40 odd? So his time's obviously limited, whereas Kepa's 24, 25. like you said, he did start off pretty well, and then it sort of all went downhill. There was rumours that he broke up with his long-term missus halfway through the season, and it affected him. I don't know if I buy that massively, but I think it could play a role, and it's just his head's not in the right space. But I think, the arrival of Mendy, should it happen, it looks like it will, I think it could spur him on, because, he'll have to realise, look, I've actually got someone that's going to steal my position from me forever if I don't, sort of fuck my ideas up. It's not just Chelsea, it's his Spain career as well, as you mentioned. He's in the Spain squad. He displaced De Gea at one point. So, there's still plenty of positives. I get why everyone's saying he's the worst, but I don't, you can't blame the whole transfer fee on him. It's not him that turned around to Chelsea and said, I'm going to cost you this. It's, the Spanish clubs are notorious for their buyout fees. So, I don't know. I'd still give him a bit, probably the end of the season. If he hasn't improved by the end of the season, that's 3 years, then it's probably time to say, okay, fine, this is just a project that didn't work.
Yeah.
You don't think, Mendy is going to be a necessary signing then? You want to give him more chance?
For me, I can't speak too much about Mendy because I haven't really seen him. So I don't know if he's an upgrade. I don't know if he's better. I did read a story about a week or two ago that apparently up until about 5 years ago, Mendy was in a job line at a job centre.
Oh, wow.
So his rise has obviously been very quick, but I think he's 28, 29. So, for me, you don't spend 70 odd million. I think Chelsea did panic buy when they bought Kepa because they didn't get Alisson. But, you don't splash out nearly £80 million on a goalkeeper and then think, you know what, we just got to bin this because it doesn't work.
Yeah. So were you going to say something before, Johnny?
What was I going to say? I'll say something. It's gone now. It was a really good point as well. No, it wasn't really. It was a rubbish point. It's gone. It's completely gone. No idea what I was going to say. Move on. No idea. But yeah, Kai Havertz has scored, by the way, for Chelsea. That was it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, we are tweeting whilst tweeting. You can tell what I'm glancing through as I'm recording. We are recording whilst the League Cup third round, second round, one of the rounds, third or second round is on. Chelsea playing Barnsley currently. I think they're 2-0 up. And Leicester and Arsenal. I assume you still have one eye on that, Johnny, but I think it's still goalless.
It's not a great game. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, my phone keeps buffering, so I've given up.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on. We'll go to you next, Alex. Have you got anything in particular you want to laugh at?
Yeah, I've got a couple, to be honest. I sort of did my research this time round, but Dan mentioned one of them earlier. So the Eric Dyer thing about how he was complaining about his workload, and I think it was Curtis Woodhouse. I might be wrong, but I think he tweeted out saying, look, I've got non-league players that are doing basically twice the amount that you're having to do, like part-time jobs, then going for training, then playing 2 games a week, whereas Eric Dyer's probably doing an hour and a half's worth of training, an hour in the gym, and then going home. I don't know, doing whatever he wants on Instagram or PlayStation or something. But that guy, to come out and just moan about your workload when you're doing half as much as anybody else, it's ridiculous. But the main couple that I saw was a former Palace boss got the Holland job, Frank de Boer.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, he didn't do very well at Atlanta either, so no. I don't know where that appointment's come from. I can only suspect it's one of these sort of, we'll follow the Man United and Chelsea route of employing a former legend as such, and hoping that can work. I mean, Barcelona did it with Ronald Koeman, so whether that works, The other one was, it's more of a fashion statement, but Balenciaga have brought out football boots. I don't know if any of you saw them.
I didn't see this, no. Anyone, you guys?
No.
Right, so Balenciaga, if you guys play FIFA and you create your own players and everything, you'll know about the basic boot options that are there. But they've basically copied that, and they've put a price of nearly £600 on them. It's just because it's got the name Balenciaga, they've brought that in. It's like, what? Like, what the hell is going on? But, no. And the last one for me was just Arsenal and Mesut Ozil. The fact that he's not playing in this League Cup game is just just get rid. Like, if he's not
I'm
gonna
pretty
play-
sure that I'm pretty sure that the Earth has actually opened up and just swallowed him, because I have not seen him for about 6 months.
He's on Twitter, though. He's on Twitter quite a lot.
I mean,
Twitter still works in the void, apparently.
Yeah. And Arsenal just scored, by the way. It's 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Oh.
Maybe we need to speak about them more.
Yeah. Mention Mesut Ozil as a goal applause.
Yeah,
It's like the opposite of Speak of the Devil. You mention Mesut Ozil and then suddenly Arsenal score a goal.
Mesut Ozil, I don't know. As you say, we've got to get rid of him, but who's going to pay his wages? I don't know where he is. He's always on Twitter saying how much he loves being at Arsenal, but he doesn't actually play for Arsenal at the moment. It's very bizarre. And at the moment, I must be honest, I don't even see him getting in the team, if I'm honest. So I think we've got a nice little setup with Ceballos in the midfield. I wouldn't be trading Ceballos for Mesut Ozil. Not a chance.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? I've forgotten one of them. You had the football boots. You had Dyer and Curtis Woodhouse, and you had Ozil. What was the other one you had?
The other one would be Frank de Boer as Holland.
Oh yeah, no, of course, I forget that one. Bloody hell. Yeah, I mean with De Boer, I don't think I need to say anything on my perspective on him with his time at Palace, but I mean, people talk about him not giving enough time, but essentially with his approach, we essentially knew before the Huddersfield game even kicked off that, we'd cocked it up. I mean, it was just the players were not taking to him at all. The style of play did not suit the players that we had, and we didn't really have a choice but to pull the trigger because it wasn't really. And obviously, it's worked. You can't say it's done anything but worked since. Because I remember the time, we sacked Frank de Boer and brought in Roy Hodgson. What the hell is going on? But it's worked out for us. So, but I think with Holland, to be fair, if he's going to succeed at any job, ironically, it's probably going to be that one because he's not going to have the squad around him 24/7 and be able to inject his training methods into them. He's literally going to only have them for a week or so, and then they'll be gone back to their own clubs, which is going to be a massive benefit to him because everywhere he's gone to, save Ajax, he's been detested. Everyone hates him. They hate his methods. They don't want to play for him. So the thing is, it's more of a focus down to the tactics. And with the way that Holland already played, historically have played, it may ironically be a match made in heaven. But off back record, it is such a bizarre appointment, and I think I think they were favourites for the Euros at one point in 2021. I think that's gone massively downhill since that appointment. We'll just have to see how it goes. I can't wait for them to beat England 5-0 in the quarterfinals and make me look like a mug. But we'll move on. Dan, what have you gone for?
I'm at a crossroads. I had Frank Lampard, and I hate to do it with Alex on, but I had Frank Lampard down, but Jordan Pickford just made two of the worst howlers I've ever seen.
I'm not gonna lie, I had a feeling he was gonna be my nomination. Well, my honourable mention, but now I've seen it. Yeah.
Bad, aren't they? They're really bad, them two. But no, I'll stick with it because it's too new. The Pickford thing, no one will have seen it yet. So we'll go with Frank Lampard.
By the time this has come out, they might have done. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, out of us lot, we can't really discuss it, because they're obviously watching their own games, which is only natural. And I don't particularly have a lot of beef with Frank Lampard, generally speaking, from his playing days. But obviously, he's had words with Klopp about a few different things now. And then obviously he come out on Sunday after the game, and he was just really bitter. Bizarrely quite arrogant and quite bitter, and as if... I get managers stick up for their own team, and that's kind of the job, because it deflects pressure and it deflects criticism away from what's just happened. But, to say that wasn't the red card after the fella rugby tackled Sadio Mane to the ground was strange. And there's been a few instances now with Lampard, certainly with the Liverpool thing, whereby he's just a bit strangely bitter. And it, as a Liverpool fan, it clearly made me laugh on Sunday watching him squirm his way out of the performance, the red card, and generally how everything went. So yeah, that was mine this weekend, and it's very much another personal one from my point of view. The Pickford thing's probably funnier, but from a Liverpool perspective, to watch Lampard just blatantly lie about something that's happened was quite funny.
Yeah, it is a bizarre. I thought it was very un-Frank Lampard sort of thing to do. Maybe I'm slightly, rose tinted. I don't know, but he's always come across as one of the more, one of the nicer men in football, one of the more humble men. But definitely not from that after that performance. I mean, I understand in a way because with as frustrating a performance as that. Not even that necessarily that bad, but just with the individual mistakes that happened, it's understandable that you'd be frustrated after that. But you know, there are better ways of handling it, and it was very almost Mourinho-esque, you could say.
Yeah, he was quite angry, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think it's something like, you know, where Chelsea and Liverpool sort of built up this rivalry over the past, I don't know, 2 decades or so?
Yeah.
Where it's just sort of, he's in the moment and thinking, okay, right, it's Chelsea v Liverpool. Okay, I've had Mourinho doing this whilst I'm a player. I've had, I don't know, X, Y, Z. And there's always been sort of fierce battles between the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that sort of just played a role in his mind and he's just gone with it without thinking, basically.
Yeah, maybe. I like Chris Wildermuir, Sheffield United. I like managers who tell it how it is, and I get why you have to be biased towards your own club. That's partly the job, you know. But also, if something's obviously a penalty or obviously a red card or whatever, then just say it. Like, we're not stupid. No one's stupid. Like, everyone knows that's a red card, so we don't mind. Even if you're a Chelsea fan, you don't mind if he comes out and says, yeah, you know what, that's a red. Like, don't deny it just for the sake of it. You treat us like fucking idiots, quite frankly, if you do that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly not a good look for him or Chelsea at all. So moving on to mine. Again, I was tempted to pick Manchester United after that performance. I was very tempted after night to pick Jordan Pickford because, I mean, he's playing Fleetwood Town, for God's sake. I mean, I know they're a decent side, but they're still League One. And he's been directly at fault for both goals. Very much, if they go on to lose this, it'll be because of him. Even if he doesn't do anything wrong for the next two, he's given them that pathway back in the game. But I think it's such a big opportunity to be missed that I'm going to have to nominate the entirety of Sky Sports Football. The entire place, because oh my god, the week that they have had. Well, first of all, there's Patrice Evra, which I'm sure a lot of you saw. Made an accusation about the age-old tabloid talk now about Wilfried Zaha and David Moyes' daughter. Again, no evidence presented for this whatsoever, but he just sort of rattled it off there. And Sky Sport even got to the point where it's so bad, Sky even had to come out after the game and retract the statement and apologise for him. Even besides that, just his overall bitterness, about the result, you can tell how much he resented us for beating Man United. As I'm sure you've been following, Dan, the whole Ryan Brewster story. We've been talking about it before. Registered interest from Palace, which we believe to be genuine. Talks of us making a bid of something like 19 million plus 6 million in add-ons with the buyback clause. I think it was about £40 million. And then Steve Parish, our chairman, came out and said, it's demonstrably false. You're making this up. And when they tried to retract it by saying, they haven't bid yet, but we know they have the intentions to. He came out again and said, what the hell do you know about me? How do you know what I could possibly be bidding? He just wouldn't let it die. And I thought it was great, but I mean, my God, if you needed anything to demonstrate how much their reputation is in the mud right now, Sky, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you're right, obviously, about the Brewster stuff, because it was pathetic and it was really poor journalism on their behalf. But you know what, right? It's not just that with them. They are so slow with everything. Like, you go on there and they report breaking news literally 2 hours after someone decent has reported it on Twitter. It's, for what is a major establishment, they need to sort it out a little bit, in my opinion, because the two fellas that are doing the transfer stuff at the minute are always miles behind. Jim White's miles behind everything. They have Guillem Balaguer on from Spain, who's terrible. Like, for a big corporation who are like, at the forefront of stuff, they really need to sort the shit out, because, like, I wouldn't go to Sky Sports News for transfer talk now. I'd go to like a James Pearce from a Liverpool perspective. Or
I just stay glued to Fabrizio Romano's Twitter page and just hit refresh, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the most reliable thing you can do.
But that's one fella who's battering the whole of Sky Sports News in terms of like breaking news, and he'll tweet something and then literally an hour later it'll appear on Sky. I mean, how slow can they be?
Yeah, no, I like you guys. I just follow Fabrizio Romano, and if he hasn't said "here we go," then don't believe it as such. But no, I feel like I said, Sky just seemed. I think they repackage everybody else's information as their own. Like, according to Sky sources, no one's going to question where that Sky source is. But if you go on, like you say, Twitter a couple hours before, it's already been broken somewhere else. But Havertz has got a hat trick. I know it's only Barnsley, But
I was about to say, yeah, I want to nominate whichever one of us was that said that Havertz would be flop of the season, because I mean I know it's only Barnsley in the cup, but still.
Yeah, some idiot said that, didn't they? Some idiot said that. I don't know who that was.
But no, going back to Sky, I think that sort of the Steve Parish thing saying about if we've not said anything about this and I've not even made a bid, basically, it's just a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I think the Sky sources is basically just Twitter at this point, and even then, they're not even using the good Twitter sources, the ones that are actually reliable. So it's like, I think they're trying to. Maybe it's a legal thing. Maybe they're not allowed to use those sources as their own.
They use
so
Indeed. I think that's what they use.
Indeed, yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Did you see that? He was like, he saw the Sky Sports report about the bid, and he's like, "Oh my God, I told you so! I got it right." And it's like, literally an hour later, he's like, "Nope, no, you didn't." you could tell that, like, he, as well as indirectly, Parish completely, basically outed all the ITK accounts that were actually completely full of bollocks. So, I just thought the whole thing was great. And also, as well, we talked about Cave the other week and his row with HLTCO. Literally in the last today, he's reached this Patreon goal of 1,100 donors, which means he can now basically quit his job and do his thing full time. He literally got 400 followers in the space of 10 hours, which is just unbelievable. Or patrons in the space of 10 hours, which is unbelievable. And you have to say,
this today.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I actually donated it. Coincidentally, I donated him today because I've been meaning to for a while. But I finally got paid on Monday, so I actually got to be able to. I was waiting until I got paid so I could actually donate to him. Yeah, and it's just turned out that I was 1 in 400. Like, it's just, and you've got to say, with this spat with Cave, he got so much attention. You have to say he's sort of done him a favour there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't like him anyway.
No, absolutely.
It's like, I've watched Sky for years, but the Carve just seems to get more arrogant with each sort of episode that happens.
I keep pronouncing his name wrong. I'm sorry.
I don't. Well, I mean, I'm saying Carve as if I know, but I watch him and he just looks as if he's always on his phone. He's never looking at anyone else. He's never sort of. It's like he's pretending he's got transfer news coming in all the time.
Yeah, basically, yeah. He could not be clear he's talking out of their own backside, and this window proves it. But as for Dan, yeah, I mean, I'm so made up for him because he works so hard, and it's like, it's everyone's dream to be able to do what they love as a job. And I think with everything, all the, being attacked by a senior media figure, nothing still happened to him, by the way, and I doubt it will. It's the least he deserves, in my opinion. But yeah, I think, are we all agreed on Sky as our nomination then?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, when a company goes to that extent, I mean, it's quite difficult to ignore. So congrats, Sky. I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll be talking about you and your friend Jim White.
Good few mentions, honey.
Exactly, yeah. Well, yep, so that's about all the time we've got for. Thanks for listening to this episode. Be sure to drop us a like and a follow, whatever platform you're on. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify at Let's All Laugh at a Football Podcast, as well as Twitter at LALA_podcast. Be sure to check out Dan's work on Last Word on Sports, Extra Time Talk, and Read Liverpool. Be sure to check out Life's a Pitch. Be sure to check out Alex's work. Links in the description, as well as social media, as always. Thanks to Dan, Johnny, and Alex for joining me as always. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.